Hello again, and welcome to Simply Explained English. I'm Lisa, and the ever-enthusiastic Eric is joining me. Together, we simplify English for you, one word at a time.
Hello, everyone. It's always exciting to help you expand your vocabulary. Today, we have some interesting words to explore.
Okay, what are the words today, Eric?
The first word today is modest. Then we will continue with outgoing. And to convince, then to stick to. And the final one is on cloud nine.
Let's start with the first word, Eric.
The first word today is modest.
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 Great choice, Eric. Modest has two meanings. The first means not large in size or amount or not expensive. For example, you could say, they live in a fairly modest house considering their wealth. In this sentence, modest describes the house as not very big or fancy.
The second means someone who does not want to talk about or show their abilities or success. For example, he's very modest about his success. He rarely talks about it. This shows that he doesn't brag about what he has done. Today, we will focus on this meaning. Now, let's move into a sample dialogue where we'll use the word modest a couple of times. Imagine two friends talking about another friend's new job.
Did you hear about Sarah? She got a new job.
Yes, I did. But she was so modest that she didn't even say anything, even though it was a high position.
That's Sarah. That's how she always acts. Even though she has a big office, she says it's quite modest.
True. She's really not a person to show off. It must be a nice place, though.
Yeah, she deserves it. She always works hard, but stays modest.
That was a perfect use of modest, Eric. How do you think calling someone modest changes how we see them?
Using modest generally gives us a positive view of someone. It makes a person seem more likable and respectful because they don't talk much about what they have or what they've achieved.
That's so true. And it's a good character, right? Being modest is important in many societies.
Absolutely, Lisa. And it's good to be modest, not just about personal success, but also about what we have. This shows that modest people do not give much importance to material things.
Yes, and it's good to be modest, but sometimes it's also okay to celebrate your achievements. Would you agree with me, Eric?
Yes, I would, Lisa. Sharing your happiness or success with others isn't about boasting or talking much about your accomplishments. It might be just about sharing your happiness with others. Modesty and pride can go together.
That's a thoughtful perspective, Eric. It's important to find that balance. Listeners, do you think you are modest about your achievements? How do you react when you succeed at something?
Great questions, Lisa. Let's hear what our listeners think. So, our viewers can share their thoughts with us in the comments section below.
Okay, Eric. Let's continue with our second words.
The second word is outgoing.
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 Outgoing is a great word to describe someone who is friendly and enjoys meeting and talking to other people. It's the opposite of being shy.
Right, Lisa. An example sentence could be, Marta is very outgoing. She always makes new friends at parties. This means Marta is sociable and likes interacting with people.
Another example is, because he's outgoing, he enjoys social events more than staying at home. This shows that outgoing people like being around others.
Let's use a sample dialogue to show how this word can be used in conversation. Let's say two co-workers are discussing organizing a team event.
I think Jerry should plan the team trip. He's really outgoing, and he knows everybody.
That's a good idea. Jerry will definitely make it fun. He's great at bringing people together.
Absolutely. He's the most outgoing person in our office. It'll be a great event with him leading it.
I agree. Let's talk to him about it today.
That dialogue really shows how the word outgoing is used in a natural setting. Eric, do you think being outgoing is always a good thing?
That's an interesting question, Lisa. Being outgoing can be very helpful because it makes it easier to make friends and work well with others. However, sometimes people might need quiet or alone time too, even if they are outgoing.
That's true, Eric. It seems like being outgoing helps in social situations, but everyone might need some time to themselves. What would you say to our listeners who might be shy and want to be more outgoing?
I'd say start small. Try saying hello to someone new, or join a group where you share interests with others. Being outgoing starts with small steps.
Great advice, Eric. And remember, everyone is different, and that's okay. Whether you're outgoing or shy, you're just fine the way you are.
Exactly, Lisa. Okay, now, let's explain our next word. The next word is to convince.
To convince.
To convince.
To convince is a verb that means to make someone believe or agree to something by explaining or arguing. It's about getting someone to agree with you. For example, you could say, he needed to convince his parents to let him go on the trip. This means he had to talk to them until they agreed it was a good idea.
When using to convince, it's directly followed by the person you are trying to convince. For example, convince someone to do something. Like I've been trying to convince Jean to come with me. Sometimes we can also use this form. Convince somebody that. For example, it's useless trying to convince her that she doesn't need to lose any weight.
That's a great explanation, Eric. Shall we listen to a sample dialogue using to convince?
Yes, we will. Let's jump into a sample dialogue where to convince is used. Imagine two colleagues discussing a new project idea.
I really think this project could improve our workflow, but I need to convince the boss.
What's your plan to convince him?
I'm preparing a presentation with all the benefits. I hope that will convince him.
That sounds like a good plan. If anyone can convince him, it's you.
That was a perfect example of how to convince can be used in a professional setting. Jack will try to convince his boss with a presentation.
And it shows that convincing someone often involves giving good reasons or evidence.
Speaking of which, Eric, have you ever had to convince someone about something important?
I have, Lisa. I once had to convince my team that changing our strategy was necessary for success. It took some effort and a detailed presentation, but eventually they were convinced.
That sounds like a challenging but rewarding experience.
It definitely was. How about you, Lisa? Any convincing tales?
Well, I once convinced my family to adopt a pet from the shelter. It was not easy to convince them, but now we can't imagine life without our dog.
It's amazing how a little convincing can lead to such positive changes.
Indeed. And we hope today's explanation about convince was clear and easy to understand for our viewers.
I hope so, Lisa. Okay, the next word is stick to.
Stick to.
Stick to.
Stick to is a phrasal verb that means to continue doing something, to follow a plan or a rule, or to keep to a particular path, decision, or action.
Exactly, Lisa. For instance, you can say, it's important to stick to your schedule if you want to finish work on time. This means you should continue following your plan without changing it.
Another good example is, she decided to stick to her diet even during the holidays. This shows she continued following her diet plan without changes.
If we use a verb after stick to, we should use ing form of the verb. For example, I stick to eating healthy, or I stick to studying 3 hours every day.
That's a useful tip. Now let's use stick to in a sample dialogue. In this scenario, we have Carla and Jim discussing their new fitness goals.
I see you're going to the gym quite often, Jim. How's it going?
It's going great. I'm trying to stick to my workout plan this time.
That's good to hear. I know it's hard to stick to the plan, but if you do, you will reach your goal.
That was a perfect example of how to use stick to. Jim uses it to talk about maintaining his efforts.
Yes, stick to is a very common phrasal verb. It is used when talking about working out, studying, new habits, or any other daily routine.
How important do you think it is to stick to plans in real life, Eric?
It's quite important, Lisa. If you have a good plan and stick to it, you usually succeed. But it can also be useful to change the plan when necessary. So, the best option is to stick to the plan and be flexible when needed.
I agree, Eric. It's all about finding the right balance. Being flexible when needed, but sticking to our decisions when necessary, can bring success in many areas of life.
That's a great perspective. Viewers, think about this. Have you ever had to stick to a decision even when it was tough? Or did you change your plan according to new situations?
We'd love to hear your stories and how you handled these situations. Okay, Eric, let's move on to our last word.
The next word is on cloud nine.
On cloud nine.
On cloud nine.
On cloud nine is a wonderful idiom that means to be extremely happy or delighted. It's like feeling you're so happy you're high up in the sky. For example, after getting a promotion at work, she was on cloud nine for days.
Another example is, he was on cloud nine after the birth of his son.
Let's see this idiom in action with a sample dialogue. This time, let's listen to a conversation between two friends, Paul and Rachel, about a recent event.
Rachel, how was your art show last night?
It was amazing, Paul. I felt like I was on cloud nine the whole evening.
That's fantastic to hear. Your paintings must have impressed everyone.
They really did. I sold several pieces and received so many compliments. I'm still on cloud nine, thinking about it.
I'm so happy for you, Rachel. Congratulations.
Rachel uses on cloud nine twice to express her happiness about her successful art show.
Yes, she is extremely happy about her art show.
Eric, I'm curious about the origin of the idiom on cloud nine. Do you know where it comes from?
I'm not sure, but I think it might come from the idea that clouds are high up in the sky, and the number 9 is often linked to happiness or success. So, being on cloud 9 means you're at the highest level of happiness.
That's a good theory. It might be true. Eric, have you ever been on cloud nine?
Oh, many times. When I completed my first marathon, the feeling was incredible, and I was definitely on cloud 9. And the second one, when we opened this channel, I was on cloud 9 again.
I remember that day. I felt the same way, and I was extremely happy too. And now I am also on cloud nine because our channel has been growing.
I agree, Lisa. I hope it will grow more.
I hope so, Eric. Okay, I hope our listeners find this explanation of on cloud nine helpful.
Remember, everyone, on cloud 9 is an informal way to express extreme happiness or joy. That's a wrap for today's episode of Simply Explained English. We hope you found our explanations helpful and that you're leaving with new words added to your English vocabulary.
Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you never miss an episode. We're here to make English simple and fun for everyone.
Thanks for tuning in and keep practicing. Remember, every word you learn is a step forward in your language journey.
Until next time, take care and happy learning.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.